Coming up, one of the new Ipswich councillors elected in March was Andrew Fechner. He joins Ipswich Today for a wide-ranging interview about his recent change of career from hospitality to full-time councillor. We'll hear what motivated him to run and his experience during these first few months in the role. It's Monday, August 31, 2020, and I'm Alan Roebuck. Welcome to Ipswich Today, which acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which it is produced and pays respects to elders past, present and emerging. This podcast is supported by Kinetics, people-powered web hosting trusted by Australian businesses since 1999. In the 160-year history of Ipswich City Council, one of the youngest councillors ever elected is Andrew Fechner. He was one of two councillors under 30 elected in March, the other Jacob Madsen. Ipswich Today caught up with Councillor Fechner this week, just under 5 months since being elected, to go beyond the 7-second media grab to uncover how much life has changed for this passionate resident and businessman. Andrew Fechner, thanks for speaking with Ipswich Today.
My absolute pleasure, Alan. Lovely to speak with you this afternoon.
Andrew, when you decided to nominate for the Ipswich Youth Advisory Council, which I think is about 10 years ago now, can you remember why you nominated and what your interest in local government was back then?
Well, the reason for my nomination to the Ipswich Youth Advisory Council really stems from a very inspired English teacher I had who read an advertisement in the local rag, and they thought, this might be up your alley. It took debating all throughout my schooling life from grade 8 through 12, so public speaking was something I was no stranger to. And the role itself was one where you had to be an ambassador for the city and really celebrate young people and bring the views of young people of the time, to the forefront. And it was something that council was really inspired by. And Sheila Ireland, coincidentally, was the head of, was chairing the Committee of Youth and Seniors. So I had a lot to do with her back then. But outside the belief that my English teacher had in me, I really had no inclination and no idea what I was getting myself into until I was actually there.
And while you're on the Youth Advisory Council, what were some of the goals or achievements?
Well, being a part of the Youth Advisory Council back in 2010 was a very nurturing time for any young person that was prepared to put their hand up. It was considered to be, very important. It was endorsed by the whole of council. We came into the council chambers. It was all very exciting for everyone. But in that, we had little projects that we would do. They would organise for us to have professional development days, whether that be, public speaking, or that they would we'd go out to community events and be ambassadors for the city there, and just have exposure to some of the community events that the councillors of the time were attending as well.
I think it's fair to say that younger people really eyes glaze over when you mention local government or politics. How do we get more young people involved in local government?
That is the question that goes begging a lot. I've recently been appointed the chair of community culture, arts and sport. And in our first meeting with a few of the branch managers and the general manager, I did bring up this very question saying, how do we get people more involved in local government? And I think it's less of how do we get them involved in local government, and how do we just bring them out into the community? How do we re-engage with people, all across the city since taking office earlier this year? I've seen community group after community group disbanding, losing hope, losing heart, and a complete lack of the presence of young people on them. And I think that, a lot of the community groups that currently exist aren't really of particular interest to young people, and the way that we interact these days is online, smartphones. So I think that we need to, have a look at how we engage with young people, not only in terms of local government and the decision making that happens, in my role, but how do we just get people more interested to get them out there interacting face to face in the community? So, a couple of ideas would be just to think outside of the box, help people understand how they can set up meetings between other like-minded people, and bring that out into the real world. Gone are the days of people volunteering to put on a sausage sizzle and meet up and share that camaraderie and giving back to the community. I think it needs to be more focused on people's interests, because people are quite reticent to drop something that they're not particularly interested in. So how do we focus on very specific items of interest for people to get them out and get them engaging again? Is it, e-gaming? Is that something that you could bring people together to talk about? It's about finding new ways of interacting with people, and it's definitely a question that I'll get to contemplate over the next 3 and a bit years in my role as well.
We'll talk more about your committee shortly, but let's go back to the beginning of this year. You announced your intention to run later than most, February 28, I think the date was. Was this strategic on your part, or you just wanted to wait and see who else nominated?
For me, it wasn't so much strategy. It was I was neither here nor there about actually pressing the red button to announce my candidacy. It's a very difficult thing. It's a very confronting thing to put your face out there and choose to do it. But we sat on it for a while, for a couple of weeks, and started piecing together a digital presence, and saw how that looked, saw how that felt. I had a wonderful campaign manager, and he really, his belief in me was kind of the thing that pushed me over the edge to say, right, let's do it, and let's do it now. So it wasn't really strategy that we were going to come out late, and I think that I thought that would hurt me, in the long run, that I did leave it so late, and because I did feel such a sense of relief, and I became, very proud of what I decided to do, and I really owned that. And I thought, this would have been really empowering for me to have a couple of months ago to give me a little bit more time, because at that point I really didn't think that I'd get over the line and be one of the councillors for Division 3.
From where I sat, you gathered supporters very quickly, hit the ground running. What were people saying to you during the campaign as you were door knocking?
The biggest thing that people said to me during the campaign was, how wonderful is it to see that there's someone so young, so passionate about the direction of our city, and that's all it was. It was that genuine belief that there was a need for fresh faces, and I was just celebrated, and it was really heartwarming to hear, that sentiment echoed throughout, because I thought, you know what, at the very least, a young person needs to be involved in the decision making. I don't really have a lot of knowledge of how local government works, but I'm prepared to get in there, and I'm prepared to listen and learn and sit back, but actually be a voice at the table that says, is this the right direction we're going in? 27 years old, although it's not super young, I think that it's still, young enough to encapsulate what it means for us, anyone under the age of 35, what we want our city to look like in 40 years, and how do we achieve that intergenerational equity, economically speaking, environmentally speaking, and just be there and listen and be able to, have that support behind me of people who say, at least there's someone there, at least, we've got a voice, a different perspective for once. I'm an indie, so I think that the independent thing was really important for people as well in those discussions. Young, not affiliated with any political party, but prepared to get in there and learn. And I think a big part of the belief and the support that I rallied obviously comes from my businesses and my family businesses, rather, in the top of town in Ipswich. It allowed me to effectively have a reverse door knock situation where I had members of the community, thousands a month coming through the doors of, our restaurant and cafe, and you could listen to them. And I'm the kind of personality that likes to get to know people as well. So you foster that real community, facing presence, and people really love and respect that. So, all across the city, people, whether they knew my name or not, I was the guy that was pouring their coffee or pouring their beer, but decided to listen to them and to take interest in their life. So it was really, it was quite a shock that we had so many supporters behind us. But I think that comes from a place where, I did grow up in the digital age, very much, online do understand the mechanics behind Facebook advertising and how to reach a lot of people.
Yes.
I knew that I had made a lot of meaningful connections, but it was about making sure that people could put a name to my face as well. And we did that really effectively. And once word got out there, my family have worked really, really hard to make sure that we, have a successful restaurant. We're coming up 5 years this year, so that means a lot, and it's a long time to be around in business too, particularly when there's not that many others on the scene as well. So the spotlight's on you from the get-go.
How are you feeling about your decision to run now that's 4.5 months in?
Yeah, I feel overwhelmingly positive about it. It has its challenges, and there's a steep learning curve but I'm not alone. 7 of the 9 brand new to the job, including the mayor. So, we're all looking around, a little bit deer in the headlights at times, wondering, what the right thing to do is. But I think that the earnestness of this new council is something that people can look favourably upon because, at every turn we are very concerned with how the public feel, what is the true opinion of those in our electorate and how do we best represent them. And I think that, at times it seems like we're not the most polished crew, but at the end of the day, that our heart's in the right place and we always seek that community feedback and we always want to do the right thing by our community because that is what local government is. It's about trying to understand what the people who live in the suburbs within your division feel and think and dream about. And it's about trying to dovetail, those thoughts, dreams and expectations into what we can tangibly achieve for the people in our community. So I don't regret it for a second, and I'm having a good time.
Andrew Fechner, without going through an extensive list, what are your top learnings so far since taking office?
I'm absolutely loving learning about the budget process and how we build that, how we build a capital works program and really understanding how we prioritise that across the city. And this new council is doing it a little bit differently. We do rely quite heavily on the prioritisations of the organisation. But for instance, roads. There's so many across the local government area of Ipswich that could use a bit of work, to fix them up, to gain better transport corridors. But there's definitely a priority list that says, what are our least safe roads and what are the most influential roads in terms of getting people around. So learning how we prioritise and learning that sometimes you have to tell people no, for the greater good. And that's both, brilliant, but extremely difficult. And it's difficult to articulate to people, who come to you and they say, please, my road hasn't been looked at for years and years, and you have to say to them, I'm sorry, that's not part of the prioritisation, but we can, assess that again for you and see where it fits in and try and get some of those answers out to the people. So, building the capital works program was extremely fascinating to me, and it was quick the way that we did it, but we get to be more hands-on because we'll start building the budget again later this year. What are our top priorities? Where are we spending money? We're in a difficult financial position like a lot of local governments, but also much like the people that live in the city, it's very uncertain time to live through, with the presence of, COVID-19, they're looming and all of the questions around that. So, I think that if I can point to a few of the big ones, it would be building the budget, learning about the capital works program, and learning how we can better communicate that with our constituents as well is extremely fascinating to me because I think that above all else, if you use it as a learning experience for not just ourselves but for our community, then you're going to get good results in that as well.
I spoke recently with your Division 3 colleague, Deputy Mayor Councillor Marnie Doyle, and I asked her a similar question I'm about to ask you. That very first meeting, can you recall how you felt on that day?
I felt extremely nervous, extremely green in the job, and it was just I'm just trying to think. Yeah, we had only had a few workshops about meeting procedures, and I felt the weight of that learning on me because I'm the kind of person that really wants to do a good job, and knowing that there were lots of people watching and lots of people interested, I really just wanted to make sure that I was doing the right thing, and but also holding true to myself and just making sure that I was making informed decisions, having read the pack and coming in there. But felt extremely green and extremely nervous.
Well, apart from 7 of the 9 councillors being new, Andrew Fechner, residents are also getting used to 2 councillors per division. How is that working out for you and Marnie?
I feel extremely lucky to have a divisional partner as clever and as passionate as Marnie. She is so wonderful, and the way that we weave our work together so that we get good outcomes for our division is really interesting. I mean, there's so many opportunities to do it different ways, but we have high visibility over what each other is doing, and we get very involved in how we can spread the workload, what's happening in our division this week. So we'll often catch up and we'll say, well, these are the things I'm dealing with. What are the things that you're dealing with? So we can learn about them, but then divide and conquer and, set up our constituent meetings so that we're using our time effectively. But there's no better role model for me than Marnie in this whole council. She's a professional woman, a corporate law career of 25 years. And, just the amount of information and good educational experience as I get from being her divisional partner means that we just work together so well.
As of this month, which is August, you're the chair of the new committee, Community, Culture, Arts and Sport. You've already mentioned it. Did you have much competition from other councillors for this particular chair role?
There were no other councillors that contended for this particular role as chair.
Now, in this first meeting in August, there's been a lot of discussion about the opening of the new library in Nicholas Street. I can sense the excitement is building in the community. When can residents expect the doors to open?
We're working towards, and we did have this discussion in committee this week, we're working towards a November soft opening. And these are all ideas that might change over time because a lot of the conversation that was had between the councillors has only recently taken place. But what we can expect, if the COVID numbers stay down the way that they are, we can expect a transitional period in November and have a soft opening before Christmas, and then we'll do a proper launch at the beginning of 2021. And that's what we're working towards. But there's lots of logistical things to take into account. For instance, there are people out there in our community that rely on the use of computers. And if we have to close one library, if we have to close both of the libraries for that transitional period, how do people get access to the internet? How do they go about their day when we're taking that really essential part of their life away? But the general manager of economic development, who is the general manager that I have lots of conversations with about these things, Ben Poll, he's come up with the idea of just keeping people online by making sure they have access to the computers in the old library space, so that there is no downtime for those people, so that they've still got access to the essentials, that you might not be able to go and borrow a book or participate in any community meetings there, but it should only be a 3 to 4 week changeover period, and we're just gunning for that November date at this stage.
Well, that's good to hear about access to the computers, because there was talk the library was closing for 2 weeks in October, so that's been revised?
Yeah, we're currently in discussions now because we know that there is a community need for us to offer the bare essentials so people can get on with their life. We can't expect them, to get on a train or a bus and go elsewhere to another, library within Ipswich. So as to make that transition as smooth as possible, we're working through a few of those issues that you're inevitably going to run into when you have to open a new library and take all of the resources, from one place to another.
Your family has a high profile and successful business in the top of town. Have you had any significant issues dealing with potential conflicts, especially with the myriad of policies and legislation around dealing with conflicts of interest?
Yeah, we have wonderful advisors here at the Ipswich City Council. So we had about 3 or 4 workshops before the meeting, delving into the specifics of how you deal with conflicts of interest. Mine is material. I can stand to gain or lose from my business interests at the top of town. But it's the new approach to conflicts of interest is just to be open and honest about it. Anything that you can think of, just raise it. Socialise the idea with your colleagues, with the professionals that know how to deal with this, and you can always manage it out. So I'm really well advised on that front, and I've just been very proactive and open about what I do in the community. A conflict of interest isn't a bad thing. It means that you've got interests and that you are out there in the community. So managing them has been really easy thanks to the support that I have here at council.
Since becoming councillor, Andrew Fechner, there has been one significant out of left field issue I can think of, and that is COVID. Are there any other surprises you've had to deal with in this 4.5 months?
COVID really has to take the cake for all of us because it changes what we do on the weekly. The scare 2 Thursdays ago, really, there was a real sense of panic in the community because it was the first time, that it was right there at our doorstep, and all eyes on, how is the state government dealing with this? What are we doing to support our people? What are we doing to make sure that we have safe working environments? To keep everything ticking. So I think that the way that life changes around COVID, there is no bigger issue that we face right now than just that. I mean, you have to cancel some of your community meetings. You have to rethink, what you're actually doing and make sure that you're always COVID safe and following the health directives.
And finally, what do you hope to achieve in the next 4 years? And in particular, any areas you want to focus on?
Over the next 4 years, I think I just want to get a real sense of what it means to be a representative for your community. There's a real sense of responsibility that comes with this role, but it's trying to work out how, I bring meaning to the role and what changes, I'm looking to make. I'm very excited to be the chair of community culture, arts and sport. And I think that a lot of time that I spend, thinking about, how I improve the community, it's really going to be centered around how do we get people out and interacting and talking to each other. What regionally significant events are we putting on to make sure that we maintain a real sense of, community, and how do we lift, Ipswich and position ourselves to be the jewel of southeast Queensland that it is.
Councillor Andrew Fechner, really appreciate your time today, and thanks again for joining Ipswich Today.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Alan.
Ipswich Today is supported by Kinetics, people-powered web hosting trusted by Australian businesses since 1999. You can subscribe for free and share this podcast from your favourite app, including iHeartRadio, or play Ipswich Today from your smart speaker. Suggestions are welcome for future interviews and topics. Just go to the Ipswich Today website or Facebook page and leave a message. Music is supplied by Purple Planet Music. This is Alan Roebuck. Thanks for listening.